There is an old man sitting outside his tent. He is 99 years old. The sun over Canaan is brutal at midday, and he has learned, after decades in this desert, to find shade where he can. His name is Abram. It has always been Abram. His father named him Abram. His wife calls him Abram. Every person who has ever known him, loved him, cheated him, or feared him, they all use the same word, Abram. And then God speaks, not with thunder, not with fire, just a voice. And in that voice, a single sentence that will echo for 4,000 years. No longer shall your name be called Abram. Your name shall be Abraham. One breath. 5 extra letters in the Hebrew. And nothing about this man will ever be the same. Here is what you need to understand before we go any further. In the ancient world, especially in Hebrew culture, a name was not a label. It was not what your parents liked the sound of. A name was your Shem. And Shem in Hebrew means more than name. It means your essence, your reputation, your place in the story of the universe. To name something was to define its nature. To rename something was to rewrite its destiny. So when God changes someone's name in the Bible, he is not updating a file. He is not correcting a clerical error. He is doing something that is both violent and tender. He is reaching into the core of who a person is and saying, that is not the whole story. I see something in you that you cannot see in yourself, and I am going to call it into existence whether you believe it or not. This is not a story about linguistics. This is not a story about ancient naming customs. This is not a story about 5 people in a history book. This is a story about what God does with broken, unfinished, not yet people, and what he might be saying to you right now in whatever chapter of your life you are sitting in today. We are going to look at 5 name changes in the Bible, each one stranger than the last, each one given at the worst possible moment. And at the very end of the Bible, not the beginning, not the middle, but the very last pages, God makes one final promise about names, a promise that has never yet been fulfilled for anyone alive on this earth. We will get there, but not yet. Let's go back to that tent. Abram is 99 years old, and the name God just gave him, Abraham, father of a multitude, is, by any human measure, a cruel joke. He has one son, Ishmael, born through a servant woman in a moment of impatience he has never fully forgiven himself for. His wife, Sarai, is 89 years old. The years of bearing children are so far behind her that the idea doesn't even hurt anymore. It has become something else, a scar so old it no longer aches, just a fact, a closed door. And into that closed door, God speaks a name, Abraham, father of a multitude, father of noise, father of an enormous, uncountable crowd of people who do not yet exist. He has no multitude. He has a tent, an old woman, and a God he has been following for 24 years without seeing the promise come true. And yet, God does not wait for the evidence before he speaks the name. He speaks the name first, before the child, before the nation, before a single person in that multitude draws a single breath. God names what does not yet exist as though it already does. And then, almost as an afterthought, almost gently, he turns to Sarai. As for your wife, you shall not call her Sarai. Her name shall be Sarah. Sarai means my princess, a private name, a name that belongs to one man, one tent, one small life in the desert. Sarah means something wider, princess of multitudes, a name that belongs to history. She is 89 years old, and God is expanding her name to fit a future she cannot see. Here's what most people miss. God changed both their names at the same time. Abraham cannot become the father of multitudes without Sarah becoming the mother of multitudes. The promise was never just his. It was always theirs. Two old people in a tent, holding names too large for their current lives, waiting for the world to catch up. Stay with me, because the next name change happens in the dark. His name is Jacob, and Jacob means heel grabber, which sounds almost charming until you understand that in Hebrew culture, grabbing someone's heel meant tripping them, deceiving them, taking what wasn't yours by pulling them down from behind. Jacob was named this because he was born clutching his twin brother Esau's heel, trying to come out first, and he spent the next several decades living up to it. He tricked his starving brother out of his birthright for a bowl of soup. He disguised himself in animal skins to steal his blind father's blessing. He manipulated his father-in-law's flocks for 14 years with something close to genius, but cunning through and through. He is, by any measure, a man whose name fits him perfectly. And then, one night, alone on the bank of the Jabbok River, something grabs him back. The text says a man wrestled with him until dawn. Jewish tradition, Christian theology, the church fathers, they all agreed this was no ordinary man. Jacob himself says, "After it is over, I have seen God face to face, and yet my life has been delivered." He names the place Peniel, the face of God. They wrestle all night. And Jacob, the deceiver, the heel grabber, the man who spent his whole life winning through cunning, does not win this fight through cunning. He wins by refusing to let go. He is exhausted. His hip is wrenched out of its socket. He is limping and bleeding, and the sun is starting to rise. And he says, "I will not let you go unless you bless me. Not unless you explain yourself. Not unless you fix my life. Unless you bless me." And the voice says, "What is your name?" He says, "Jacob." He says it like a confession. And the voice says, "Your name shall no longer be Jacob. You shall be called Israel." Yisrael. The word sits between two translations, and both of them are true. One who wrestles with God and one whom God fights for. The man who spent his life grabbing heels in the dark is now named for the God who grabbed him back and didn't let go either. He walks away from that riverbank limping for the rest of his life. The wound never fully heals, but neither does the name. Now here is one most people skip entirely, and it is one of the most quietly radical name changes in the entire Bible. His name is Hoshea. He is young, capable, loyal. Moses' personal assistant for 40 years in the wilderness. And one day, before sending him out to scout the promised land, Moses does something small that changes everything. He adds 2 letters to the beginning of Hoshea's name. Hoshea means salvation. It is a good name, a strong name. But Moses adds Yah, the first syllable of the sacred name of God, to the front of it. And Hoshea becomes Yehoshua, Joshua, which means YHWH is salvation. Not just salvation, not salvation as a concept or a hope or a possibility. YHWH, the God who was and is to come, he is the salvation. Moses was saying something to this young man before he walked into enemy territory. He was saying, "You are not the point of this mission. You are not the source of what you carry. The name above all names is already in your name. Go." And Joshua went and took the land. And we have been saying his name wrong ever since, because in the Greek, Yehoshua becomes Jesus, which becomes, in English, Jesus. The name God gave Joshua is the name God gave his own son. That is not a coincidence. Nothing in this book ever is. So here is the pattern you are already seeing. God does not change the names of people who have it together. Abraham is 99 years old and still waiting. Sarah's door has been closed for decades. Jacob is a con man on the run from his own brother. Joshua is a young man about to walk into a war he cannot win on his own. None of them are ready. None of them are finished. None of them deserve what the new name implies. And that is exactly when God speaks. If this video is hitting something in you, if you are sitting somewhere right now, feeling like you are still in the middle of your story, still not who you are supposed to be, stay with me. We are only halfway through. And if this is resonating, share it with someone who needs to hear their name called differently today. It is an ordinary morning on the Sea of Galilee. Two brothers are pulling nets out of the water. They have been doing this since they were old enough to hold a rope. Their hands are callous. Their backs ache. They smell like fish and salt and the particular kind of exhaustion that comes not from one hard day, but from 10,000 of them. The older brother's name is Simon. It is a common name, a perfectly adequate name, a name that belongs to roughly the same number of Jewish men in first century Galilee as James or John, belongs to English men today. Nothing about Simon is extraordinary yet. And then a man walks up to him on the shore, a carpenter from Nazareth, a man Simon's brother Andrew has been talking about for days. And before Simon can introduce himself, before he can say a word, the man looks at him and speaks first. "You are Simon, son of John." A statement, not a question. The man already knows. "You shall be called Cephas." In Aramaic, Cephas means rock. In Greek, it becomes Petros, Peter. And here is where it gets remarkable, because the Greek does something the English translation flattens entirely. When Jesus later says, "Upon this rock I will build my church," he uses not Petros, the small stone, the pebble, but Petra, the bedrock, the foundation stone of a cliff face. Jesus is saying, "You are Peter, a stone. And on this Petra, this immovable foundation, I will build something that cannot be destroyed." The wordplay is deliberate. The crowd heard it. We miss it. But here is what stops me every time I read this passage. Jesus gives Simon this name, rock, foundation, unshakable, at the very beginning, before Simon has done anything to earn it, before the miracles, before Pentecost, before the sermon that brought 3,000 people into the church in a single morning. Jesus names Peter rock, before Peter denies knowing him 3 times in a courtyard while a servant girl points at his face. Pay attention to this. God does not name you for who you are. He names you for who you are becoming. Even when the distance between those two things is so vast, it looks like a lie. Peter carries that name for 3 years while being, by most measures, a terrible rock. He sinks when he tries to walk on water. He rebukes Jesus for talking about the cross. He falls asleep in Gethsemane. He swings a sword at a soldier's ear and misses everything he was aiming for. And then, at the worst possible moment, in the worst possible place, a charcoal fire in the courtyard of the high priest, a girl looks at him and says, "You were with him." And Peter says he was not. 3 times. With increasing desperation, the rock crumbles, and Jesus, that same morning, looks at him from across the courtyard. The text says he turned and looked at Peter directly in the moment of the third denial. Not with anger. The text does not say anger, just a look. Peter goes outside and weeps bitterly. But the name holds. The name always holds. Because it was never Peter's name to earn. It was always God's name to give. But it gets stranger. Because the next name change doesn't happen the way you think it does. Most people assume that when Saul of Tarsus was knocked off his horse on the Damascus road, blinded by a light brighter than the midday sun, hearing a voice say, "Saul, Saul, why are you persecuting me?" That is when he became Paul, the dramatic conversion, the new name, a clean break from the old life. But read the text carefully. For the next several years after Damascus, Luke still calls him Saul. Saul in Damascus, Saul in Jerusalem, Saul in Antioch, Saul, 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 even after he believes, even after he is baptized, even after he begins preaching in synagogues. The name Paul does not appear until Acts chapter 13, and it appears at a specific moment, the moment Saul steps onto a ship bound for Cyprus, leaving the Jewish world behind and sailing toward the Gentile one. He stands before a Roman proconsul named Sergius Paulus, and Luke writes, almost casually, Saul, who was also called Paul. Saul is a Hebrew name, the name of Israel's first king. It belongs to the Jewish world, the synagogue world, the world of Torah and temple and circumcision. Paul is a Roman name. It belongs to the world of Cyprus and Athens and Corinth and Rome itself, the world that has never heard of Abraham. God did not rename Saul on the road to Damascus. He renamed him at the moment the mission became bigger than one people, one language, one tradition. Saul was enough for the synagogue. Paul was needed for the empire. The man did not change. The scope changed, and the name expanded to fit it. Josephus, writing in his Antiquities, notes that name changes among first century Jews were not uncommon when a person crossed a cultural threshold. A change of world required a change of shem, of essence. What Paul experienced was not unusual in his world. What was unusual was who was doing the renaming. Now we get to the promise, the one planted at the beginning of this video, the one that has been waiting. The man writing these words is old. He is the last of them, the last of the 12 still alive, the only one who was not executed. Every other man who walked with Jesus on those Galilean roads has been killed for it. James, beheaded. Peter, crucified upside down. Paul, beheaded in Rome. Andrew, Philip, Bartholomew, Thomas, gone, one by one, in cities scattered from Jerusalem to India to Ethiopia. This old man survived all of it, and the empire, unable to kill him, did the next worst thing. They exiled him, shipped him to a small volcanic island in the middle of the Aegean Sea, a place called Patmos. Black rock, salt wind, the sound of water in every direction. His name is John. And on that island, on an ordinary Sunday morning, he falls on his face before a vision so violent, so blinding, so outside the edges of human language that he will spend the rest of the book struggling to find words for what he saw. A figure whose face shines like the sun at full strength, whose voice sounds like the roar of many waters, whose eyes are like flames of fire. And this figure, this one who was dead and is alive forevermore, begins to dictate 7 letters to 7 churches. And in the second letter to the church in Pergamum, he says something that stops everything. To the one who conquers, I will give some of the hidden manna, and I will give him a white stone with a new name written on the stone that no one knows except the one who receives it. This is not a story about a theology of heaven. This is not a story about a reward system for good Christians. This is not a story about a verse people cross-stitch onto pillowcases. This is the end of a conversation that started in Genesis 17 with an old man outside a tent, hearing his name changed for the first time. Here's the part nobody tells you. In the ancient Roman world, a white stone was used in two specific contexts. The first, a verdict of acquittal in a court of law. When a jury voted to declare someone not guilty, they cast a white stone. Innocent. Free. The charge is dismissed. The second, an invitation. A white stone with your name on it was a ticket of admission to a feast. You could not enter without it, and no one else could use yours. God is saying both things at once. You are acquitted, and you are invited. And the name on the stone, the name only you and God will ever know, is the truest name you have ever been called. Not the name your parents gave you, chosen before they knew who you would become. Not the name your failures gave you, written in shame in the middle of the night. Not the name the world uses, the job title, the relationship status, the diagnosis, the reputation. The name on the white stone is the name God has been calling you since before you were born. The name he sees when he looks at you and sees not what you are, but what he is making you into. Eusebius, writing about the early church in his ecclesiastical history, records that the first Christians read this promise and wept, not from sorrow, from recognition. They understood something we have mostly forgotten, that to be renamed by God is to be reborn by God, that the name change is the new birth, made visible. Think about this. You have watched a child being adopted, or maybe you were that child, and you know the moment the judge signs the paper, the moment the door closes, the moment the new parents look at the child and say the new name out loud for the very first time, and the child hears it, and something shifts in the room that you cannot explain. That child is no longer who they were this morning. They are not defined by where they came from, who left them, what happened before. They have a new name, and the new name means you belong to us now. You are ours. Whatever comes next, you come into it as our child. That is what God has been doing since Genesis 17. He has been in the adoption business, and every adoption comes with a new name. Abraham, Sarah, Israel, Joshua, Peter, Paul, and one day, a white stone with your name on it. A name so personal, so specific, so entirely yours that no one else in the universe will ever carry it. We will get there. He promised. So here's what we have seen today. Abraham was 99 years old and still waiting when God renamed him. Sarah's door had been closed for so long, she laughed out loud when the angel told her it was opening. Jacob was a con man on the run the night God grabbed him at the river and wouldn't let go. Joshua was a young soldier walking into a war he could not win before Moses added God's name to his own. Peter was a fisherman who would deny knowing Jesus before the sun came up on the worst morning in history. Paul was on his way to arrest Christians when the road to Damascus changed everything. Not one of them was ready. Not one of them was finished. Not one of them had earned what the new name implied. Takeaway 1. God has never once waited for someone to be ready before he renamed them. The name always comes before the person catches up to it. Always. Takeaway 2. If you are in the middle of your story right now, unfinished and unsure, and further from who you want to be than you would like to admit, you are not disqualified. You are exactly where every person in this video was standing when God spoke their new name. Takeaway 3, there is a white stone with your name on it. Not a metaphor, not a comfort, a promise. written by the same God who looked at a 99-year-old man with no children and called him the father of multitudes before a single one of them existed. He has been speaking names into impossible situations for 4,000 years. He is not finished yet. Which name change in this video hit you the hardest? Abraham, Jacob, Peter, Paul, or the white stone? Tell me in the comments. I read every one. And if this video meant something to you today, share it with someone who needs to hear their name called differently. God is still in the business of renaming people. The only question is whether you will let him.